The soft hum of the jet's engines filled the cabin with a steady, calming vibration. Snoop Dogg leaned back in his luxurious leather seat, sunglasses resting coolly on his face. His fingers tapped against the armrest in rhythm with the smooth beats playing through his headphones. This was supposed to be his moment of peace, a break from the chaos of tours, studio sessions, and constant demands on his time. This flight to the Maldives was supposed to be his reward. The cabin's warm glow of ambient lighting gave the space a golden, serene atmosphere. The faint scent of fresh citrus and leather lingered in the air. Everything about it felt right. Luxury. Comfort. Escape. Snoop glanced out the window, eyes tracing the endless horizon of sky and clouds. The world below was miles away, and for once, it felt like he could finally breathe. A flight attendant approached with a smile as warm as the cabin's glow. She carried a tray with a glass of freshly pressed juice. "Here you go, Mr. Broaddus," she said, addressing him by his real name with respectful familiarity. "If you need anything, just let us know." "Appreciate you, sweetheart," Snoop replied with his signature cool, raising the glass in a small toast. "Y'all outdid yourselves with this one." The flight attendant smiled before continuing down the aisle, checking on other passengers. As the plane began to taxi, Snoop's eyes moved across the cabin. The other passengers were all well-dressed, professional-looking individuals, business travelers, vacationers, and the occasional jet-setter type scrolling through their phones. Nobody paid him any special attention, which was exactly how he liked it. Once the plane lifted off, Snoop felt the familiar shift of gravity. He leaned back, pulled out his tablet, and started jotting down ideas for a new track. The hum of the engines became his background music, and his fingers danced across the screen, adding beats, hooks, and rhymes. But peace didn't last. The sharp clack of the cockpit door caught his attention. The captain stepped into the cabin. He was a tall man with sharp, angular features and eyes that scanned the room like he was looking for something, or someone. He moved with a certain authority that felt forced, like he needed people to know he was in charge. When his gaze settled on Snoop's row, he stopped. His eyes lingered just a second too long. Snoop noticed. The captain approached slowly, stopping at the edge of Snoop's aisle. "Enjoying the flight, sir?" he asked, his voice polite but sharp. "Sure am," Snoop replied, leaning back with a grin. "Y'all run a tight ship. No complaints here." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Mind if I ask who you are and why you're on this flight?" Snoop's grin faded. He'd seen this play out before. "I'm Snoop Dogg," he replied plainly. "Booked this flight just like everybody else. All my paperwork's in order, if that's what you're askin. The captain's lips thinned into a hard line. "We'll see about that," he muttered before turning on his heel and walking back to the cockpit. Snoop's eyes followed him until the door closed behind him. He'd seen this before, disguised power trips, unnecessary flexes of authority. He'd dealt with it his whole life. He leaned back, took a deep breath, and reminded himself this was supposed to be a peaceful trip. But something inside him knew it wasn't over. Minutes later, the intercom buzzed. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing a slight operational issue and will be making an unscheduled landing at the nearest airstrip." Passengers glanced at one another, confusion on their faces. Snoop's eyes locked on the cockpit door. Operational issue didn't sound right. Moments later, the captain reappeared. This time, his expression was colder than before. He strode straight to Snoop's seat. "Mr. Broaddus, I'm going to need you to come with me," he said, folding his arms. "For what?" Snoop's voice stayed calm, but his eyes stayed locked on the captain's. "You're a safety concern," the captain said bluntly. "You're getting off this plane." The cabin grew quiet. Passengers glanced over but said nothing. The tension in the air was suffocating. "Not happening," Snoop replied. "I'm a passenger," just like everybody else. I'm staying right here. The captain's face hardened. You can leave on your own or I'll have you removed. When Snoop didn't move, the captain's patience snapped. He grabbed Snoop's arm, yanking him out of the seat. Cameras flashed as passengers pulled out their phones, recording every second. The plane touched down at a small airstrip surrounded by jungle. As the cabin door opened, the humid, sticky air poured in. The captain grabbed Snoop's bag, tossed it onto the tarmac, and barked, "Out. Now." Snoop stepped off the plane, his eyes locked on the captain's face. "This ain't over," he said calmly. The captain's eyes narrowed. "Yes, it is," he replied before slamming the cabin door shut. The engines roared, and the plane took off, leaving Snoop alone on the sweltering tarmac. His gaze shifted to the vast jungle around him. There were no buildings. No cars. Just dense greenery stretching for miles. He slung his bag over his shoulder and started walking. Gravel crunched beneath his shoes as the weight of everything settled on him. After hours of walking, he spotted light flickering in the distance. His heart lifted. He picked up the pace until he reached a small clearing where a village stood. The warm glow of lanterns illuminated wooden huts, and the smell of fresh herbs and roasted meat filled the air. Children noticed him first. Their eyes widened in recognition. "That's Snoop Dogg," one boy shouted. The village came alive. People gathered around, curiosity and awe on their faces. A man with broad shoulders approached, extending his hand. "Welcome, brother," the man said. "You're safe now. Come on, let's get you cleaned up." For the first time in hours, Snoop's shoulders relaxed. The villagers tended to him, offering him water, food, and a place to rest. He told them his story, and they listened with quiet rage and compassion. "That pilot's gotta pay for what he did," one man said firmly. The next day, with the villagers' help, Snoop was on his way home. But the story didn't end there. Back home, Snoop went live on social media, his face filling millions of screens. "What's up, fam? Y'all need to hear this," he began. He told them everything: the captain's treatment, the forced landing, the isolation, and the kindness of strangers who had helped him. The internet erupted. Hashtags like #JusticeForSnoop trended. News outlets picked up the story. Civil rights lawyers reached out. The pilot was stripped of his license, and airline policies were reformed. Snoop's voice became a movement. His final words in the live stream were clear: "This wasn't just for me. It's for everybody who's ever been told they don't belong. Y'all know now, we ain't just passengers. We're the whole flight." His words echoed across timelines and social media feeds, inspiring people from all walks of life. Activists, artists, and everyday individuals shared their own stories of resilience and perseverance. The #WeAreTheFlight trended worldwide, symbolizing a collective movement for dignity and respect. Calls for policy reform grew louder. Airlines began rolling out new training programs to address bias and discrimination, and civil rights organizations amplified Snoop's message. It wasn't just about his experience anymore, it was about all passengers everywhere. Months later, Snoop was invited to speak at a global conference on equality and justice. His speech, now iconic, closed with a line that resonated with millions: "When they try to ground you, rise higher. When they try to silence you, make them hear your roar. We're not just here to ride, we're here to fly." The crowd erupted in applause, many standing with tears in their eyes, moved by his message of courage and unity. This story isn't just about Snoop's journey, it's about the power of standing firm in the face of injustice. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to be silenced. If this story inspired you, reflect on the moments in your own life where you've had to stand strong. Leave a comment below sharing your experience. Your voice could be the one that inspires someone else to keep fighting. Let's keep the momentum going and show the world that together, we're not just passengers, we're the whole flight.